Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach, and welcome to episode 264, Time Blocking Alternatives. Many of us are trying to figure out when we are writing this semester, and time blocking is often suggested as a great way to make sure that you get some writing completed. The idea is that you block out some time in your schedule, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I show an example of this on the screen of what it looks like. I have a map that I've made for the semester where I kind of blocked out all my different, let's say, responsibilities. So, for example, I have a block where I want to do some grading. I have some writing time. I teach classes. I do some parenting duties, which on my calendar are all in pink. So I color code, I have things blocked off and everything looks nice and neat like Legos. And the logic behind time blocking is just that nobody can take that time if it's blocked. And then the other part of that is that your projects are going to get completed because there's time available for it. So meaning one of the problems people don't get writing done is because they don't make time for it. And then the week goes by and they say, I didn't write. And it's because, they never made time for it. So time blocking does work for some people. However, one of the things that comes to us at Defend, Publish, and Lead with our writing clients is that a lot of people don't like time blocking. It doesn't work for them, and it hasn't worked for them. And there's a lot of reasons for it. One of the reasons is that time blocking does require writing on demand. So if you have blocked 9:30 a.m. on a Monday, and that's your writing time, and it's blocked, the idea is that you're supposed to write on demand. Some people who have been doing time blocking for a long time, they do show up. Maybe they don't love it, but they kind of ease in and they get going and it's okay. Other people, though, when they see the writing block on the schedule, they actively work to avoid it. They find something to make sure that they don't go to their writing time. So if you're really struggling with writing, time blocking might not be the way to go. There's lots of other ways to do this. And I've really started to think about alternatives because I do block my time, but then again, I thought about this and I'm like, actually, I don't. I block a few spaces in the week, but that's not all the time that I use, but I still manage to find some time. So traditional time blocking, if you're going to do it, one of the other things about it, I would just say is that it works if you're a little bit proactive. So I always talk about thinking through your semester because we know this semester is not the same as last semester. You have different classes, you have different responsibilities. Depending where you are, weather may be a factor in like how long it takes you to get to work. So there's lots of things that are happening in this semester that might be different than previous ones, including when your writing time is available. But one of the best things you can do is look ahead to the next week. Figure out when you can get some writing done. Look ahead to the week after that. Do the same thing. Because one of the things that also happens with time blocking is that it works until you hit a busy, busy week where, for example, you get 100 student essays in, or you have to prep for a conference and you're going to be gone for 3 days. So blocking works as long as nothing goes wrong. So one of the things that I talk about in one of our episodes, and I will link to it, is how I got some time back once I had blocked out time and then I had the problem with a sick child. I had to go to the school. I figured I was going to lose the day, but I did really try hard to get that writing time back. So I'll link to that episode because you can see, if you watch the YouTube video, you can see logistically like how I pulled that off. So I mentioned alternatives. I'm going to talk about 3 different ones. I have actually experimented with all 3. I like all 3 actually, and I'll let you know how I'm kind of thinking through these, but also how you can use them. So if you watch on YouTube, this will make more sense if you're looking at it. But if not, what you are looking at, imagine this in your head, audio listeners, is a blank week with hours in half-hour increments. And then 2 of the 7 days are blocked off as writing days. So one model that is very simple is just to say certain days are writing days. So I have a client right now who she has Monday and Wednesday as her writing days. She has no other work obligations on those days. She has family responsibilities and all that. But in general, she has around between 8:30 and 4:30 the whole time. So it's kind of a big, glorious chunk of time. Not all of us have this, but as you move up the academic chain, you might have a little bit more flexibility. And so what happens is that she doesn't worry about blocking specific little chunks here or there. She just knows these are the days and she has an official start time. So one of the things I've talked to her about specifically is that it's fine to have a writing day, but what time are you starting? Because you want to make sure that you have kind of a set start time, but also a set end time. So you're not using the whole, writing into 11 p.m. when you started at 8:30 a.m. That's, for a lot of us, that's not sustainable anyway due to other responsibilities. But noting what time you have a start time to get going, then it's less about thinking about blocking the time because you've blocked the day. That doesn't have anything to do with time efficiency or how you use the time. So I will come back to that. And in fact, I do have a resource on using a writing day effectively. I'll make sure that I link to that in the show notes. That's actually an article that might be useful there. So using a day, start having a set start time. And another thing that might be helpful in the writing day is that because the time, just because it is a day versus a single block, if you know when the end time is, you might want to think about what tasks can go on those days. So if you have like a 4-hour block, maybe you take for a little break for lunch, then you take another 2-hour block. You still could do some time blocking within that writing day. But because it's a day and not a tiny little slot somewhere on a schedule, it would be helpful to also have a list of tasks. So if you finish with something early, you can start on something else. One of the drawbacks to writing days, because you should always know drawbacks with time blocking, is that sometimes a long time comes before, or a long time goes by before your writing day comes around again. So in a case of 7 days where somebody is writing on Monday, somebody is writing on Wednesday, that means there are 4 whole days with no writing to come back to that project on Monday. So one of the things that would be really beneficial here is at the close of Wednesday's writing session, maybe even taking a full half hour to draft out a whole list of ideas of what to work on the next week, some notes, where to go next time, and so on. So you can have writing days. A lot of academics will use, say, like Fridays for writing days. The only other caution about writing days would be I would pick a day that you're less likely to get it interrupted. And a lot of times Friday is not an ideal choice for that if you do any long travel. Also, many academic conferences fall over the weekend where they're like Thursday to Sunday. So you would lose writing days on those weeks. So something to think about there. Another alternative is to not think about blocking out hours for writing time, but instead blocking out time to work on tasks. So this is, again, a little easier to see if you look at it on YouTube, but what viewers on YouTube are looking at is the same weekly schedule, 7 days, split up by half hours, and there's little post-its over different half hours for different tasks. So let's say you have 3 tasks. So maybe one of those tasks, it will need to be worked on in 2 different sessions. It's too big to fit into any available time you have to work on it. But let's say Monday you work on task 1 2 different times. So that's what shows up on here. It looks like 2 different little writing blocks on there. Maybe on Tuesday you work on task 2. Tasks could be anything. They could be finding references. It could be cleaning up my paragraphs, writing a new abstract, applying for a conference, putting in a conference proposal. It could be trying to find a better theory than the one I have. It doesn't matter what the task is, but the idea is that you just block out time to complete that task. One of the nice things about this strategy, so again, I mentioned 3 tasks in a week. Some tasks, you can do them once, and then you have used the time for it. You've knocked out the task. Sometimes you can finish the task early and get some time back. So, if you want to, you can go to another task on your list. If you've got some time, that's fine. Or you can say, hey, I blocked out 30 minutes to do task 2, and it only took me 25. I get 5 minutes back. One of the things I like about this kind of strategy is that it makes it less about this is your writing time. You have to show up and sit in your chair and do your writing, because time blocking in a lot of ways does seem kind of like a punishment to writers that do not like to write. But sometimes they're more willing to work on specific tasks. So if I said, hey, task 3 is for you to rewrite your methodology section to include limitations. They might put in a couple of segments where they're going to work on writing their methodology section. So on my screen, there's like 3 different times blocked out to do task 3, but maybe it only takes them 2. And one of the things about this is that there's kind of, for these task times, if you block out time for a specific task, yes or no if you have finished it. Some tasks will take weeks. You might work on one task throughout your week, many times because it's a big task. But if you can break down some of those really big tasks into smaller things, it's very easy to show up for your project time. You don't even have to call it writing time, but you can call it like project completion time, do a task, check it off, go to the next task. And for some people, they're very resistant to writing. This is the way to go. This is a strategy I have experimented with without knowing it. But after I complete a book project I'm working on, because right now I'm kind of writing in all available hours, but the next project that I work on, I'm going to try doing writing this way. So I will report back on the podcast. And if that made no sense, because this is the one that's difficult to explain to an audio listener only, but if it made no sense, check out our YouTube video on this, because if you see it, you can see the difference between having a writing day where hours are blocked for writing and then having time blocked for tasks versus, hours. So some weeks might have 10 tasks blocked out in a week. Other weeks, it might be the same task, just multiple times. So it's, again, tying that time to project completion in a specific purpose. The last way to think about time blocking that I want to talk about is the one that I have been using for a long time now. What I'm showing on screen is my weekly map. Again, it was the same one that I showed on screen 1 where I had writing time blocked out, but this time I took the writing time blocks off the calendar. And I've mentioned several times on the podcast that I like to think about writing in a range. And so what I will do every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, somewhere in there, I will look ahead to the next week and say, how many hours can I reasonably write this week? And reasonably means I still get to have at least 7 hours of sleep. I still am able to play tennis. I play tennis once a week. I'm still going to that. I still can meet my other obligations like service. I still have time to prep for teaching and so on. So, personal things are important to me, like going to mass on Sunday for me. I'm Catholic. I want to go. Like making the time for that is still in there. And I also even put in a little slice of an hour and a half for what I call life management, because one of the things that is a common complaint with academics is that, yes, we have a flexible schedule, but then we're the ones that are always stuck doing the car repairs or waiting for the plumber or all those things that are going to the bank or all the things that have to happen on a weekday. So I have just kind of given up on assuming I can knock out those tasks on a weekend. And I still do some of them on a weekend, but I do have an hour and a half blocked out on a Tuesday morning just to handle any kind of life management things that have to happen. So those are all things that are actually blocked on my calendar. But looking at that, I can just eyeball a calendar and kind of say, all right, well, in my week, I normally don't want to do any writing after 4 o'clock, and I want to do it after my children are in school. So what I'm looking at are open windows between like 8:30 and 4 p.m. or something like that. And I just count them up. So, I would think reasonably. So if you end up having something like 17 hours, I would really think long and hard if you could actually pull off 17 hours of writing. Many very, very busy academics and even dissertation writers, that might be a lot of writing to happen in a single week. But what I can see in my schedules, I've got somewhere in the neighborhood, depending on the week, of between like 9 and 12 hours. And so instead of blocking time for writing, what I know at the beginning of the week is I must get in at least 9 hours and I can stop at 12 hours. So what I'm doing every day is I have just a quick mental tally. How many hours did I write today? Did I get anything done? If I didn't get anything done, I know now I only have, say, 4 weekdays to get those 9 to 12 hours. And so one of the best things about this approach is it allows me to write whenever I want to, whenever there is some open time to do it. I don't have to say it's my writing time and show up in that way. But I also am much more inclined to want to get the writing done because I want to make sure I'm hitting that weekly target of how much time I'm spending on writing. So that also means if it's Thursday and I have only written 7 hours, I'm going to be really aggressive in trying to find 2 more hours to get to that bottom end of my range. So I like that as an approach, but all of these can work. So why we're talking about them today on this particular episode is now we're getting towards the end of January, sometimes New Year's resolutions to get more writing done, or at least, sit down and, start working on our projects, those kinds of things. Sometimes, just like other resolutions, start falling away. And it could be that you're just picking something that isn't really a good match with your temperament or your personality. So I might consider that a little bit. I also have some people that will block out writing time to make sure that, some work time is available and nobody can put a meeting over it in a shared calendar, but they still use a range. So you can blend some of these approaches together. And if there's one that really works well for you, we would totally love to hear about it. You can always email me at Christine@Defend Publish Lead or chat with us on LinkedIn about it. So it's something that we've been thinking about. I'm actually working on another book about writing project management where this is a big segment of it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, speaking of time, I know I've mentioned on our podcast many times that TAA, Textbook and Academic Authors Association, is one of our sponsors. And one of the things that I would recommend doing, if you haven't done this already, the membership for TAA is just $25 for a whole year. And I've talked many times on this podcast about all the templates and the webinars and all that. But one other thing that's really great with this organization is they put significant attention towards time management for writing. And so if this is something that you're struggling with, if you join, you're able to get access to some recordings of webinars, some webinars on demand on time management, and a lot of tools and templates to help you think about writing for the week, including like how could you maybe log your writing to at least get some awareness in how you're doing your writing. So it's a couple things to think about. As always, you can reach out to me at Defend Publish and Lead, and happy writing this week.